Robin, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me on your show, Simon.
It's a pleasure. I brought you a little gift.
Wow, I think that might be a first.
I might offer you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I have a feeling, yeah, go for it. I have a feeling it's on brand. You can let me know.
Wow. Amazing. Colombian, for all your many viewers, listeners, Colombian coffee. Great coffee is not the result of chance. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
A local coffee shop
Okay.
on Abbot Kinney here in Venice, Intelligentsia, which is where I go most mornings for my espresso. And of course, something that you write a lot about in your book. Inside the bag, there's a little bit more. I wasn't sure if you would have access to a coffee machine while you travel and whatnot, so that's the instant espresso version.
Instant espresso, Intelligentsia, Black Cat, classic. Yeah.
So you can report back. Let me know what you think.
I love it. Thank you. It's very generous of you.
Last night, I actually thought I was going to have to cancel on you. And I'd been reading yesterday, and there was this part in your book where you spoke about doing what you say, which reminded me of like being impeccable with your word. And I thought, here I am, and I'm going to have to just cancel on Robin and affect his plans. I was at the airport. I took a 3-day trip down to Mexico, and we were just talking then. I'm from Australia. So I'm here on like a B1, B2 visa, which is kind of business tourism visa. And so I'm going through customs, and usually I get pulled to the side and interviewed. And that's because I had a green card years back. So they see that as a bit of a kind of red flag. What's going on here? You've got rid of a green card. It was one from when I was a kid. And now you're on a B1, B2 visa. And the officer pulled me in, and this time they decided to give me like quite a bit more trouble than normal. And really drilling into like what was I doing here, and what was the business that I was working with here. And the business that I partner with here for my podcast is very new. It's called Voicing Change. And it kind of does look on paper like, oh, this business has just been established to get him a visa. It's someone else's business, and it is a legitimate business arrangement, but it was very hard for me to kind of convince them of that, because of everything they would look up online. It's kind of invisible. Like the press release for Voicing Change is coming out this week. So here I am trying to convince this customs officer that I am here for legit business reasons. And I say, I've got a number of conversations, interviews lined up, and one of which is tomorrow morning. And I pull out my Notion. Do you know Notion? It's like a software online kind of platform where my team sort of books in my like shows me my calendar, essentially, my flow. And I showed him, and I'm going through, and I say, look, see, I've got a guest tomorrow morning, Robin Sharma. And no word of a lie, one of his eyebrows raised up. He looks down at my phone, and he says, the monk who sold his Ferrari. And I said, yeah. And he goes, great book. And he goes, you can take a seat, sir. Anyway, 10 minutes passes, he calls me back up. He says, look, I think what you're doing is legitimate. I believe you. I'm going to let you in this time. Make sure next time you come with more documentation. So it's a close call. And I think you might have saved me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it had to help.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and I think we're meant to be here having this conversation. I felt very moved when you just told me what he said, because for me it's so important to just have some kind of an influence on people. And this is year number 31. Writing these books, Simon, and creating content. So yeah, it's a fascinating story, and I appreciate you for navigating it. And I think it's incredibly important that we do our best to follow through and keep our promises. I think it's a great way for us to build inner strength by closing loops and doing what we say we're going to do. Life can be messy. Last night was an example for you, or yesterday was an example for you. So we can only do our best, where none of us are perfect, but I think it's a great story, and it moved me to know that book was helpful to that gentleman.
This morning, I know that espresso was part of your morning for sure.
Love good coffee.
I mean, I one of the things that I really enjoyed about your book was how intentional I think you were to make the reader feel like they were there with you. And there were so many moments where I felt like I was having my morning coffee with you and with your dog. So I can only imagine that this morning was, and you're traveling at the moment, right?
Just got in last night.
Okay, so maybe your travel routine is a little different to normal, but espresso, cold shower, mantra, breath work. What did this morning look like for you?
Well, this morning I got a bit more rest because we just got in, so I trust my body. Usually my morning routine would be getting up at 4 o'clock. So I've written a book, The 5 a.m. Club, but to me that's almost minimal viable morning routine. I just love, as you mentioned, the new book, The Monk Who, the Wealth Money Can't Buy. There's a lot of personal elements in it. I live on an olive grove, and I just love, Simon, getting up at 4 o'clock, opening up the window and hearing the roosters and the dogs barking. And I'll lay in bed and I'll do MVP, meditation, visualization, and prayer. So maybe I'm focusing on a mantra. Maybe I'm visualizing one of the projects that I'm working on as if it was unfolding exactly the way I wanted it to. MVP, prayer. So meditation, visualization, prayer. I find prayer very powerful, especially very early in the morning. Setting out my intentions, praying for the health of my parents, my family, my readers, my team, the world. The world is in a messy place. About 4:45, I have a little gym at home. So I love getting on my elliptical.
This is in Italy?
In Italy. I live in Tuscany. So I have a little gym. We live in a old farmhouse. And so I have a gym set up. I'll get on the elliptical. I will hydrate. I love listening to audiobooks or a podcast, for example. So I'll do cardio, I'll do some weights, and I'll do mobility, which is important.
What are your go-to podcasts other than The Proof? What else do you like to listen to?
I'm obsessed with The Proof. I would say Lewis Howes's podcast,
School of Greatness.
I'm going to be meeting him in a few days. Rick Rubin.
He's amazing.
I just think he's just so zen about everything, and I'm a creative. I'm an artist, as is everyone.
I noted there was a few references to him in there.
Yes, I mentioned a few of his quotes. So I like his podcast. I'll listen to some metaphysics podcasts as well. So audiobooks, podcasts. So I love learning while I'm sweating. And then at about 6 o'clock, I'll go into my writing room and I will have my espresso, exactly as you say. I'll have 2 cups of espresso. I'll play country music and I will pull out my journal and I will start writing. I will write about how I feel. I've never shared this before, but I'll put HDIF. How do I feel? HDIF. So I've never got into the actual logistics of me writing in the journal, but I will with you, Simon. So I pull out a fresh page, I'll put the date, and then I'll write a few lines about how I'm feeling. And then the first thing I'll write is, maybe it's, what the time is, where I am, and then HDIF, how do I feel? And then I'll just start free flowing. And then I often ask myself a series of morning questions that are very helpful for me. What am I grateful for? Where am I winning? What will I release today? What does an ideal day look like? Very powerful questions. And then I'll write, I often will just set intentions. So I'll write about, and I have these things called game charts. So I've never shared this before, but you're getting me in all, you're doing your voodoo on me.
Try my best.
No. So what I'll do is I'll have a fresh page and I'll write in the center of it. It might be next 3 months, the next quarter. And then I'll start mind mapping what it all looks like creatively, productively, in my businesses, in my life, et cetera, et cetera. So I have a visual of it.
Get really clear.
Well, clarity breeds mastery. Vague plans lead to vague goals. So I want to be monomaniacally focused on the few things that are most important. I want to be a minimalist versus a maximalist. So that game charting technique is one of the things I do, and then I'll actually color them.
Why do you think that isn't something that is kind of intuitive that a lot of people do? Is it a scary thing to sort of map out everything that's ahead of us?
That's an excellent question. I just think a lot of it's as simple as it sounds. We're not taught these skills. We're taught geography and mathematics, and we're taught to fit into the crowd and think like everyone else. But these tools, whether it's game charting, whether it's MVP, meditation, visualization, and prayer, whether it's the social circle upgrade. In the Wealth Money Can't Buy, there's a chapter, recruit a dead board of directors, which we can talk about. But we're not taught these tools. And then often when we hear someone talking about them, they're so foreign, we dismiss them as not really workable.
Mm-hmm. When I got to you mentioned that gratitude was a part of that journaling process. And after reading your chapter, it's something I actually really loved about the book. For me, it's not intimidating in that the chapters aren't that long. They're very digestible. And it was like banger after banger. It's so much so that I was like, where am I going to start this conversation tomorrow? What are we going to cover? There's just so much breadth here, and it's going to be impossible to cover all of it. But we'll cover a few of the kind of threads that I wanted to, or strings that I wanted to pull. But when I was reading about gratitude, this morning, I usually practice gratitude in my journal as well, but I reframed it to what would I miss most if it was gone? And that I found that to be a really nice way to instantly think about all of the things in my life that I might be glossing over. If they weren't here tomorrow, would I be upset? Would I be missing those things?
That makes me think of a Persian proverb. I cursed the fact I had no shoes until I saw the man who had no feet.
Perspective.
Sonia Lyubomirsky is an eminent positive psychologist, and she's found that the happiest people have one thing in common, a number of things. One thing they have in common is deliberate gratitude. So that's not once a year, New Year's Day, I'm grateful for my family. It's a dosage of gratitude every single day where it's deliberate. So you find things to be grateful for that otherwise have normalized.
So you think it's always a deliberate action? There aren't some people that are just more grateful about life. Those are people that are more intentional.
Well, I've never thought of it, but I've met people who just seem to be happy. They just seem to be grateful. For me, and in my experience, building happiness is like fitness. It's like wellness. You've got to work at it, and your habits determine the quality of your life. And the habit of gratefulness does promote gratefulness. And the more you practice it, the more looking for the win in the difficulty becomes a default response. But I think we all have a lot of wealth around us. Well, that's part of what I was trying to write about here, which is our society has said money in the bank, big portfolio, big house, material things, get wealthy, you'll be happy. And I believe money is only one of the 8 forms of wealth. Money's important, puts food on the family table, gives us freedom, allows us to do good things for people we love. But there are 7 other forms of wealth that often we take for granted until we lose them. Health, family, our craft, for example.
How did you come to this kind of, I guess, thesis that there is these 8 forms of wealth? I guess when I think about a lot of the topics spoken about on this show are informed by science, and there's definitely science. Seems to be quite a bit of science in the book that you're drawing from, but also experience and the experience of others. Is that the approach you took here to come to this position that there are these 8 forms of wealth?
A lot of it came from my own personal meditations and my own personal observations. Society does in many ways program us to think, okay, the mountaintop of success is having a lot of money and a lot of financial resources. And I just found as I increased income, as I had, moved on in life, let's say in that sphere, it didn't make a difference. It's that old Zen idea, wherever you go, there you are. And so I realized, again, money is important. It gives us freedom and the ability to do things. Having said that, I realized there were some other forms of wealth that I think are absolutely important. So I created this 8 forms of wealth model, and then I started to share it with the clients that I mentor, the billionaires, the sports stars, the movement makers. And the model was absolutely revolutionary for them because a lot of these people had made it to the top of the financial mountain, but they were completely empty. They were situations like one of my clients had billions of dollars, but his 20-year-old children wouldn't even talk to him, so he was in deep pain.
Is that the commonplace someone ends up if they earn millions or billions of dollars, that they neglect these other areas of wealth?
I don't think it's necessarily true. It doesn't mean everyone who makes a lot of money will end up alone or disconnected from their family. Yet I see a lot of people who make huge financial fortune. They are so monomaniacally focused on building the business and selling the business, they take the people they love the most for granted. Or I had one client, again, worked day and night, built a great company, sold the company, showed up at my office, blisters on his lips, lost maybe 50 pounds. I said, what happened? And it was developed an autoimmune disorder because he had sacrificed his health in pursuit of the business. So it can be a trap, right? It can be a trap. You're building this business, you're chasing financial fortune, but you lose peace of mind. I guess what I'm trying to say in some ways, Simon, is what's the point of having all the money in the world if you lose peace of mind along the way? So money is only one form of wealth. If you have inner peace, you've got a great form of wealth. If you have self-respect, you have a great form of wealth. You have a rich family life. I just saw my 80-year-old parents the other night in Toronto before I came here. Having a strong family life connected to your family it's a form of wealth. So I'm just encouraging people to see all these different forms of wealth because it's a great key to happiness as well as, I think, a well-lived life.
There's a quote in your book. You say, I guess what I'm suggesting is please don't spend the best days of your life climbing a mountain only to realize when it's too late that you've climbed the wrong one. The people there that you've worked with who have earned a lot of money, do you think that their underlying motivation and what's driving them to focus so much on business and growth of the business is that they really believe more money equals more happiness?
I would say yes. I think what a lot of good souls on the planet are trying to do is they are trying to feel better, as simple as it sounds. There's this idea of the theory of holes. We all have these holes inside of us that we're trying to fill as human beings. We're all trying to fill holes. We want to be loved. We want to feel peaceful. We want to feel safe in the world. We want to feel awe and wonder, and we want to feel good. And so I think a lot of us, we buy things or we chase things. We want social media likes. We want this gorgeous house or a yacht or a jet, perhaps, because we think it's going to make us feel good. And yet when you look at the social psychology theory, the positive psychology theory of hedonic adaptation, it will confirm that you get to those things or you get to the positive goal and you're going to feel good for a while, but then you return to the baseline level of happiness before you got the new car or the new house. So I think we're trying to feel better, and we think if we get those things, we'll feel better. And I think also society has hypnotized us to say this is what success is, but I don't think it's necessarily what it is.
And then once you land in that position and you have those things, and as you say, your level of happiness or baseline happiness comes back to where it was, you're also now living a lifestyle that requires more income in order to kind of keep up to the things that you're used to and the types of things that your social circles are now doing. It's a more expensive lifestyle, and there has to be some degree of pressure that comes with that.
I think you're right. I think you add more complexity to your life. You add more stress to your life. I think you want your things to be servants, not your masters. And I think the great human beings are in the world, but not of the world. So I'm not saying in The Wealth Money Can't Buy, don't get material things, but just don't let those shiny toys define you, and enjoy your things, but don't need your things. And it's that incredibly wise proverb, which is be in the world, but not of the world. Be in the world, but not of the world. Be in the world, participate in it, get the nice car if you want, get the nice house, stay in the nice hotel room, get the social media followers, etc. But don't need those things for your happiness and security and your self-esteem.
Right. Focusing on those things or over-focusing on those things can create that illusion of scarcity, that I'm not enough. Is that where the suffering of unworthiness kind of comes from that you write about?
Yes. We live in a culture of comparison. I believe it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, comparison is the thief of joy. And yet I would actually say there's never been a time in the history of humanity where we have been such comparison creatures. We are so addicted to the white screen, and we're looking at what everyone is doing, and that's creating a way of being where we're on a hamster wheel, looking at what everyone's doing, seeing it, and wondering if we measure up. And I just think there are so many other forms of wealth and so many other forms of success that society is not encouraging us to follow. You know, it could be seeing your job as a job, no matter what you do. I had a conversation at the hotel with a gardener today. And you would have thought from talking to him that he was building the chapel of the Sistine ceiling. His eyes sparkled. I've got to tell you, I was in London the other day, and I showed up at this black cab to take me to City Airport. And it was just perfect. Like everything was just perfect. And so I had to ask him, I said, your cab is just perfect. Tell me your philosophy. So he told me about it, and he goes, yeah, it's pride of my work. And then when I pulled over, when he took me to the airport, he goes, look, this is what I do. And he pulled out this Windex thing, and he started, and he was vacuuming the inside. And all I'm saying is seeing your work as your craft and as something that feeds your soul is a form of wealth. You don't need the car. You don't need to feel bad because you don't have a Patek Philippe, or you don't need to feel bad if you don't have all of those things society's saying. Like if you have a great relationship with your mother or father, for example, isn't that a form of wealth? If you wake up in the morning and you respect yourself and you're doing you, isn't that a form of wealth?
You mentioned comparison just before, and kind of feeling within ourselves that we're enough. Something that I kind of experience personally is imposter syndrome. And like even coming here today, I've been doing this for like 6 years now, 300 plus conversations. But I was running through my mind, that inner critic was saying, why are you interviewing Robin Sharma? Of all people, why not Rick Rubin? Why not, Tom Bilyeu or Rich Roll? People who I'm sure you will sit down with. But I was asking myself, am I going to add any extra value? Is this really something I should be doing? And I get that quite a bit, I think, when I'm working on something, whether it was writing my book or doing this show. You've had, you sold 15 million copies of your book. So by any standards or traditional standards, that's an enormous success, right? Do you have any doubt? Did you ever doubt that you were the right person to write this book?
Well, the first thing I want to say, because you're getting into some really interesting territory, and I really appreciate your honesty. Every human being has such riches and such value and such gifts and talents and such worthiness within them. So I think it's fantastic that we're sitting here right now. And you have gifts that all those people you mentioned don't have, and they have gifts that we might not have. And I certainly don't think I'm anyone special. I mean, in the world, there's those things that you mentioned, but I wake up in the morning and I just feel like a very ordinary person. And I have doubts and fears and insecurities just like every human being does. I think just some people are probably better at hiding them. Like I look sometimes at people in very high stress or intense situations and they just look so incredibly calm. And I think they're feeling the emotions of fear, but they're just good at hiding them. So, and then you're saying, you asked, did I feel like I was the person to write The Wealth Money Can't Buy?
Yeah.
Well, this is just, I had to write this book. It just felt like the time to write about the 8 forms of wealth and to remind people that there are a lot of rich people on the planet who are actually very, very poor. Jim Carrey, the Hollywood icon, said it well. He said, I wish everyone could be rich and famous to realize it doesn't make a difference. So I just think we're in an interesting time where social media and all of this, there's hustle and grind culture, the programming, even on podcasts, you're mentioning podcasts a lot. It's like, today we're excited because we have someone super special. She's a billionaire. Well, you don't hear as much. We have someone incredible on the show today. He's a teacher of kindergarten kids who has 12 people in the class and has figured out a way to innovate with limited resources. And when he goes home or she goes home, they have a family dinner and they talk about interesting things. See, I think we're sure to be a financial titan requires great sacrifice, great innovation, great vision, dismissing the chattering voices of the critics. But why are we not celebrating the gardener I met today and the taxi driver as well? We're not. Pardon me?
Why? Like, why is it so easy to fall into that trap? Because I'm hearing everything that you're saying, yet when I step out into the real world, there is so much focus and value placed on the material things.
Correct. It's our cultural programming. We measure people's worth not by their integrity, not by their humanity. We measure worth generally. It's a generalization. We say, this person is successful because they have got to the top of the financial mountain.
Is that a new thing, you think, or something that we've always kind of experienced as humans in community?
I would say both. I would say more and more we've become a materialistic world, more and more of the past number of decades. Having said that, I would think thousands of years ago on the savannah, the hunter with the most wins probably was most respected. But I think one thing, which is worldly success without peace of mind, is fool's gold. And I just think more and more as we try to buy more and more and have more and more, I mean, even public, the storage things, that's a relatively new innovation because we just have so many things. We buy things, it makes us feel better. And I'd actually go to a psychological point, which is potential unexpressed turns to pain. And a lot of us, we're betraying our human genius. We are busy being busy, but we're not doing the right things that will give us fulfillment. We're playing with our phones, we're chit-chatting, we're spending a lot of time in entertainment, all sorts of different addictions, versus doing the work and building the lives that are of substance and soul and beauty. And so when we betray our human instinct to be great, to push magic into the world, to materialize more of our potential, it turns to pain, because I think our conscience sees that we're betraying ourselves. And so I think what I'm trying to say is a lot of us are in pain. And so we look to the drug of choice, let's say it's social media or worrying or alcohol or whatever it might be, to mask the pain, which just puts us into more pain.
So this book is really about, what I'm hearing, throw this back to you, is really about reducing that pain and suffering by shining a light on, you refer to them as hidden habits. So shining a light onto these areas of our life that don't sort of fall underneath the traditional definition of wealth, but are incredibly important to feeling that richness of life.
What I would say is the 8 forms of wealth model in the Wealth Money Can't Buy is a framework for an amazing life. And I would say that financial success is one of the 8 forms of wealth. I just want to be really clear on that. It is one of the 8 forms of wealth. I'm not saying don't make money, don't chase fortune in that form, go for something deeper, etc. I think you'd agree. We all need to pay the bills. We want to take trips. We want to put our kids through school. We want to help people in need. We don't want to get pushed into a corner and have to make decisions that aren't right for us because we don't have the money to do what we want to do. There's 20 chapters in the book on what I've learned from the billionaires on how to make money, their habits, their mindsets, their structures. One chapter is called Ask the $1 Billion Business Question. So that's one of the 8 forms of wealth. The other elements of the framework, though, are, I can get into them, but the first form of wealth is growth. So why did I call growth a form of wealth? When you are developing yourself, learning how to become braver, presenting more of your talents into the world, getting to know your values, taking care of your health, that's a form of wealth. But again, society doesn't go, Simon, you're developing yourself every day, you're into personal growth, you're working on self-mastery, you're pretty rich. You don't hear that, but it's a form of wealth. Second part of this framework is wellness. You're a master of wellness. So second form of it, if you have your health, you're a wealthy person. Someone once said to me at a live event, they gave me a piece of paper. They said, go back to your hotel room tonight and read it. It said, health is the crown on the well person's head that only the ill person can see. Now, you know this so well.
It takes you to lose your health to appreciate it.
If any one of your listeners, watchers from around the world loses their health, and I pray they don't, nothing else will matter but getting their health back.
I had a guest 2 episodes ago, young guy, Axel. He was late 20s and super healthy. Fit, one of the fittest people I've ever come across, really. And he got some back pain, went into hospital. They ran a lot of checks, couldn't work out what it was. Worked out he had Burkitt's leukemia and told him you have 5 days left to live. And what you just said then is exactly what he echoed. Talk about a life-changing experience and perspective shift. He'll never undervalue his health.
Second form of wealth. So to see good health as a form of wealth and then to protect it. Why? Because energy is more important than IQ. You can have a bold vision to change the world, to launch a new business. If you don't have the execution energy to get it done, nothing happens. Health is important for just feeling good in your body. If you don't have good health, you can't have longevity. I think longevity is one of the keys to legendary. I want to live an extra 10 years than maybe my lifespan was predicted, or 20 years, which makes me think of Ray Kurzweil, live long enough so you can live forever. But I mean, by extending your life, you get to spend more time with your family, you get to help more people, you get to pursue your craft, you can make more income, you can have more impact. So what I'm trying to do with the book is share this framework of the 8 forms of wealth that has helped my clients so deeply, so people can start to see, hopefully, what real success is all about. And it involves money, but 7 other forms of wealth, and then all the habits and tactics and systems around those 8 forms of wealth.
Quickly flick through the 8. You've mentioned growth. You mentioned wellness. I've got some specific questions on some of them, but just to give people a kind of overview.
Sure. First form of wealth is growth. Second form of wealth is wellness. Third form of wealth, family. You get to world class, multi-billions, let's say, and you're all alone. What's the point? Fourth form of wealth, craft. Working at your work and seeing it not just as a job, but as a chance to build intimacy and fluency with your gifts and your talents. Seeing your work as a chance to serve. Seeing your work as a chance to make people's lives better. Seeing your work as a calling, no matter what you do. We're here in this incredible studio. I've never seen anything like it, Simon. It looks like a woodworking studio. So you can have one woodworker who comes in and goes, I'm just a woodworker. And you can have another one who says, okay, today I'm going to just optimize my craft a little bit more. I'm just going to make a little piece of beauty, push it out in the world because the world needs more magic.
Makes me think of the gardener that you mentioned earlier.
Gardener. I mean, honestly, so when I was on my way to the gym this morning, I met the gardener, who was actually a philosopher in disguise. He was a Yoda in disguise. He was just, I said, where are you from? He said, Mexico. I said, Viva Mexico. And he said, thank you. When you say that, we feel proud. I said, there's a Mexican proverb. He said, tell me. I said, well, I think it goes, they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. And that just got him on this.
Powerful.
He just started saying we are strong and people should be strong and this. And then I met a pest control person. And we had another conversation, and he was just really well dressed in his pest control outfit. And I said, I'm looking for, my room. I was a little lost. And he goes, I think it's here. I can help you find it. And I just said, you seem to really like what you do. He goes, I love what I do. He said, I've been in bad jobs. And he said, this is a really good job. And he said, I live in Torrance, but I come over here and I get to be around all these gardens and this and that. And these are people who, in a world where so many people want the rewards of world class without doing what world class requires, so many people see their job as a job versus, no matter what the job is, a chance to make a difference. I saw 2 people today who didn't lose the sparkle in their eye. Here's a pest control person he seemed incredibly grateful. So the fourth point is,
you wouldn't know either of those things if you weren't open to striking up conversations with strangers.
I think, as I get older, I just love people. I just, and I honor people's labor. I mean, here's a human being standing in the garden or doing the pest control, and they see the nobility and the dignity of their labor. I honor people like that. You just see someone working in a not a billionaire job, not a CEO job, and it's easy. Society might say that's not an important job. These are human beings doing important work.
And they deserve to feel seen.
To feel seen. And you make a huge point. which is, I think, our job, your job, and my job, and all of our jobs, is to go through each day. It's a little off topic, but I think it's the wealth money can't buy. And listen to people's stories and to connect with them and help them be seen and make connections. And the paradox is they feel bigger after they leave you, and you feel so much happier. And if we can go through life connecting to people in this world where so many of us we're so disconnected. We're just so disconnected, Like as I flew over here yesterday, I'm not judging, just reporting, but there was the woman in front of me and she just cranked her seat back, just cranked her seat back. And she was like a member of royalty. And it just seemed by all of her behavior that she was the most important person in the world.
It's very easy to think we are the center of the universe.
I tried to deconstruct it in my prayer and my journaling and meditation this morning just to figure out the behavior. And my sense was just someone who just really thinks they're at the center of the world. And I would actually say, Simon, if you were to go deeper, you'd probably find a very scared, insecure person trying to take up a lot of oxygen. But I'm simply saying, I think if we can go through the world and connect to people versus disconnect with them, we'd be so much happier.
You do write, you said that's kind of digressing from the book, but there is a part of the book that I remember, if I recall correctly, where you talk about the importance of being able to listen, and perhaps listening being a skill that we're losing, the importance of that skill to build these connections that you're talking about.
Yes, listening sounds so obvious, but in a world of so much chatter, so few of us are just really great at being present. I mean, presence is a form of wealth. Presence is a form of riches. If we're present to people. So I think listening is key, and a lot of people haven't got much listening in their childhoods.
What is it that makes someone a good listener, or what do good listeners do that poor listeners are not doing?
Well, I think a good listener is really curious. A good listener really cares about the person in front of them. A good listener is present. A lot of us, there's so much chatter. This is why personal development, this is why the first form of wealth is growth. The more you can still yourself, center yourself, clear out the chatter, clear out the noise, the more you can hear the signal. So as you still yourself and become calm, especially in a storm, then you're going to be present. And when you're present to someone, I believe it's a huge gift you can give to another human being. If you want to make people feel bigger in your presence, be present with them, and people can feel if you're really there.
Okay, so that's craft. Number 4.
The fifth form of wealth is money. Money is one of the forms of wealth. As I mentioned, there's 20 chapters plus on how the world's most financially successful people do it. And that's from my experience, 31 years in the field of working with many of the best financially. The sixth form of wealth, community. So we become our social conversations. Let's go to the science of, for example, Nicholas Christakis at Harvard University, who has found that we become not only, Simon, you might find this interesting, we are influenced not only by our friends, we are influenced by the friends of our friends and the friends of our friends' friends.
Social webs.
Social webs, he calls it social networks. Why? Emotional contagion, the phenomenon where we pick up unconsciously and invisibly the dominant emotions of people we spend most of our time with. And number 2, mirror neurons. It's a type of brain cell that causes us to subconsciously mimic the behavior we spend most of the time, the people we spend our time around. So,
choose your friends wisely.
So incredibly important. If you want to be Kobe level athletic, play with the absolute best. If you want to be the wisest person in your neighborhood, surround yourself with people of wisdom. You want to be financially free, play with people whose lives you want to be living. So one of the things I talk about in the book is a social circle detox. I think you can be around energy vampires or change the world. You can't do both. And then people often say, well, my mother is toxic, or my husband is toxic, or my best friend is toxic. And I would say reason, season, lifetime. Some people are meant to be in our lives for a reason, some people for a season, some people for a lifetime. And one of the best things you could do is let go of the toxic people today, because they are costing you your financial fortune, your expression of your genius, your happiness. And if you still want to love them, which is good, love them from afar. Seventh form of wealth is adventure. We are nomadic. We are meant to try new food, to travel, to explore new books, to venture to unknown possibility. That's when we come alive. And then the eighth form of wealth is one of the most important, and it's service. If you are serving people, helping people, making lives better, no matter what you do, you are a rich person.
Mm-hmm. Do you think each of these 8 forms of wealth is equal weighting? They're equally as important?
I do.
And in terms of your experience working with people, are there any standouts with regards to where people kind of lack or neglect the most?
Absolutely. First form of wealth, growth. So many people don't care for themselves. Again, I would say the cultural hypnosis, Simon, is, oh, you're up at 5 a.m. meditating, visualizing, praying, writing in a journal. Lucky you. Makes me think of Mahatma Gandhi. I have a lot to accomplish today. Therefore, I must meditate for 2 hours rather than 1.
Clarity.
If you have a lot to do, you better work harder on yourself and refill the well and get strong inside. So we often neglect the first form of wealth, which is growth. Family, that's a big one. Especially, I must say, especially young entrepreneurs. We get so caught up in that cohort generally. Well, I think so many people in business, you get so attracted in reaching the career mountaintop. Family often suffers. My partner Al, her grandmother is 96 this spring, and when she was 90, we had a big birthday for her, and I sat next to her and I asked her. I said, "Nona, you're 90 years old. What's most important? You've seen a lot of life." She said, "Oh, Robin, family. My dad will be 87 in June. I can tell you, like, few things are as important as family," he tells me. So people neglect growth, people neglect family, people neglect adventure. Isn't it interesting? We were kids. We loved stamp collecting. We loved biking. We loved rock climbing. We had all these portfolio of passions that brought us to life. And as we get older and become adult, we stop doing the things that made us so much joy, right?
We forget to play.
We forget to play, and then we wonder why we're not happy. So that there's 25 or so chapters about, how to inject novelty and adventure into our lives.
Allow me to introduce you to Momentous, my go-to supplement brand for all things protein and creatine. It's pretty easy, especially if you're not tracking everything that you eat, to fall short of the optimal daily protein intake. To help reach my daily protein target, I complement my diet with 1.5 scoops of Momentous's chocolate or vanilla chai plant-based protein for 30 grams of protein and all essential amino acids, which supports muscle growth, hormone and collagen production, skin health, and recovery. I also consume 10 grams of Momentous' creatine daily to enhance energy production, muscle strength, bone health, and cognition, with studies now showing the benefit of creatine on short-term memory and intelligence. I'll do anything for a little extra brain power. And what's really cool is that both products are NSF certified. This certification is the only third-party certification program trusted by the likes of the NBA, the MLB, Ironman, etc. With this, you can be confident that Momentous's protein and creatine are free from unsafe levels of contaminants, prohibited substances, or masking agents, and that what is on the label actually matches what is in the product. For discounts on these supplements, visit livemomentous.com and use code LIVINGPROOF for up to 36% off on subscriptions or 20% off one-time purchases. That's livemomentous.com with code LIVINGPROOF at checkout.
There's a theme throughout the book as well that kind of centers on the importance of solitude. It comes up in various chapters, and there's a few that kind of stand out. There's one that I think was in your growth section of the book where you spoke about encouraging people to eat out alone.
Yes.
Why should we not be so scared of going out and sitting in a restaurant by ourselves? I think, I'll put my hand up. It sounds pretty daunting. Can't say sure, a cafe, but an actual restaurant, how many times in my life have I gone there without technology and sat down there just by myself, no distractions, with lots of people around sharing meals together? Yeah, not many.
Well, the first thing I'd say to that is the discomfort of growth is always more dangerous than the illusion of safety. And we are meant to risk, and we come alive when we are out on the skinny branch. So doing the things that most terrify us is how we get our power back to the things that terrify us. So why do I say eat out alone? Because it's bravery training. If you feel uncomfortable doing that, then I would say go do it, because if you keep on doing it, you're going to take your power back in this world where so few of us can be alone. We live, even when it's so easy, even when we get home, the inclination is turn on music or pull out the phone. And obviously, the more we do it, the more it's going to be stimulating and we're going to be addicted to it. So that chapter on eating out alone is about bravery training, and it's one of the ways that we can grow. I mean, I think we should set up scenarios for strategic growth. Do difficult things. I talk about in the book, I talk about my sailing instructor. Every 2 years, he would pick an adventure that would scare him, and he would do those things.
I have another quote of yours. I think it's yours. It's not from this book, some of your other writing, but it speaks to this. Frequent discomfort is the price of accelerated progress.
Yes. Yeah, hard is easy and easy is hard. So when I wrote The Wealth Money Can't Buy, I can tell you, I wrote it about over 12 months last year. And it was a beautiful suffering. I rewrote it maybe 20 versions of the manuscript. Each one of those versions might have had 5,000 plus changes in it. It was hard, grueling, painful work. And I could have mailed it in. I've written a number of books. My publisher would have been happy. But I think the moment you start mailing something in, you're on the path of obsolescence.
And you need that friction or resistance, I guess, in order to feel fulfilled with it.
I totally agree. So it was a beautiful suffering. It was really hard. I pushed my craft to the jagged edges. It wasn't easy, but hard is easy, because I think when you consistently do hard things, you have an easier life. You know this. You have hard workouts, or you do difficult things in your health protocols, or you have the difficult conversation with your significant other, or you do something that you've been frightened to do. It creates an easier life. You love yourself more. I mean, if you want to love yourself more, do more of the things you don't love doing.
When you're talking about bravery in that chapter, I think you say how you do one thing is how you do everything. Can you unpack that?
So it's an old idea, but the way you make your coffee sets up a way of being for the way you do the work project. Everything matters. So the way you do the little things is the way you do the big things. There's a word, it's not talked about enough, Simon, but it's your approach. Your approach. And I think it's really important to calibrate your approach and to optimize your approach, because your approach, the way you approach making a cup of coffee, the way you approach making a meal at home. I talked to a lot of people today. I had a conversation with the valet out front of the hotel.
And it's only 11 a.m.
It's only 11 a.m. I'm
just warming up.
And he said, we were talking about mise en place. So a great chef, before they start the meal, is going to line up all the tools perfectly. It seems like something very small, but lining those things up perfectly sets up a way of being for an excellent meal. One of the top restaurants in the world was 11 Madison. And they had a protocol where the logo of the restaurant under the plate had to be lined in a perfect orientation. And people used to say, why would that matter? The diner's not going to see the logo. But it was like, yeah, but it sets up an experience that's going to be wow. And so the way you do the smallest of things sets up the way it sets up your approach. Even the little things you do for people sets up the way that you treat people. Speaking about hotel rooms, because I'm in one, remembering that someone's mother or father is going to come into the hotel room and clean that room sets up a way of being with, well, I better take the towels and put them in the bathtub, and I better make sure that everything is fairly neat because there's a human being coming in here and I want them to have a good experience.
Be a good person.
Be a good person.
Yeah. Again, intuitive, but maybe not something that we always practice or is always, it's easy to forget those small things that you're talking about. And there's another story in your book. I think the stories in your book, if I'm being really honest, when I didn't have huge expectations for your book because I thought he's already written these great books. How many people are continuing to write these amazing bestsellers? And then when I was reading it, I was like, a sign of a good book is how many times are you picking your jaw up off the floor? And it was literally chapter after chapter. And I think what was really doing it for me was, a lot of the themes that are in here, I've heard, not all of them, but I've heard a lot of them before, but the way that you weaved in kind of where you were and drew on quotes from others, but then told stories, it made many of these things stick much better than it has before. And I'm going to have to go back and read this 2, 3, 4 times, and I will, because I can already tell it's going to have a big impact on the way that I kind of navigate my life. But there's a story that kind of is related to what we're talking about here, where you are speaking about what a gift is and giving without the intention of receiving. And you talk about the guy that you gifted a bottle of wine to.
Yeah, I smile because I still remember the experience. So I love Rome. Anyone who loves magic would love Rome. And my party was in this restaurant, one of my favorite restaurants in Rome. And we were having just one of those amazing meals. We were in flow state. The magic was flowing. People were enjoying wine and great food. And in comes this family, just a really nice family. You could see probably, a few generations. And I was watching the gentleman at the head of the table. And when it came to ordering wine, he was at a loss. So he looked over at me and he pointed to it and he ordered the wine that we were having. So as the evening went on, this gentleman and I started having a conversation. The tables were pretty close. And I said, he said something to the effect of, yeah, this is great wine. And I wasn't sure what to order, but, your table looked like you were having fun, so I just had it as well. And towards the end of the evening, I just said to the server, I said, could you please order another bottle of wine for that table? But it was a different vintage. And afterwards, the gentleman came over and he was just blown away. He couldn't believe that, our table had done that for his family. And, I have to give credit. We're here in Los Angeles. Pau Gasol, when he was head of the center of the LA Lakers, came to one of my live events. And I drove him back to the airport. And as we went through the airport, he, to a person, to a child, to a human being, stopped for everyone. He had all the time in the world. He was present. He was gracious. And at the gate, I said, Pau, you had time for everyone. What's your philosophy? And he said, Robin, it takes so little to make someone happy. So buying a bottle of wine, I don't know, $25, $30, $40, it's not that expensive, but you can blow people's minds. And so give gifts, and give gifts. If you give a gift for an expectation of a return, it's not a gift, it's a trade. Just give books, give whatever it is, get bottles of wine, give people gifts and you will delight them.
Mm-hmm. And that's the physical gift side of things. But we've already spoken about the idea of just being curious about other people and helping them feel seen. And that doesn't cost anything. I think you write in the book, and this left a pretty big impact on me, was if you multiply out just doing like 3 good things a day, what that looks like over the next decade. It adds up.
Yeah, I'm giving you a lot of travel examples, but I travel a lot. I was at a hotel in Barcelona, and Alberto, I talk about him in the Wealth Money Can't Buy. He was the valet outside of this hotel on one of the main streets in Barcelona. And we were just chatting. And I said, Alberto, I said, if you meet, I forget what I said in the book, or something like 100 people a day and you leave them better than you found them, after a year, that's 3,000 people. After 10 years, that's 30,000 people.
Or imagine the ripple effect that
And the ripple effect, Simon. Just by treating people and uplifting them, being positive, giving them a verbal, sincere gift. Alberto at that hotel, not a billionaire, not a head of state, could influence 50,000 human beings. And then, as you say, the ripple effect.
Without looking for something in return.
One of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself is just being kind and present to other human beings. Like, you just feel connected to human beings. You feel connected to humanity. So,
there's a Japanese word, intoku. Have you ever heard of that? It means, I really love this word. It means to be good to others in secret.
Wow.
Or to be good in secret.
How do you spell it? Or what's the word?
Intoku. I-N-T-O-K-U.
I-N-T-O-K-U. Intoku. Wow. I have to
To do
that.
good in secret, I think, is the exact
Do good in secret
kind of definition. It's a nice word.
It's a beautiful word. I think if you give a gift to get your name on a hotel wing, is it really a gift or is it some ego stroking? But you're right. I think to give a gift where no one knows about it, that's where the masters play.
That's altruism. Right?
That's altruism. That's Mandela level. That's one of my favorite books is The Billionaire Who Wasn't. It's a great book. And this is the gentleman who built, when you go into a hotel, you see duty free. Mm-hmm. He was the one who came up with the concept.
Wow.
Let me have duty-free shops. So he made a massive fortune, and then he and his wife decided, let me give away all the money before I die. And he gave away his entire fortune to good causes. It's pretty interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. It does the accumulation of a lot of financial wealth often act as a somewhat burden, responsibility for people? Is that something that you've come across in the people that you've worked with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They spend their best years building a multi-billion-dollar fortune, and then they spend their final years worried about losing it, as simple as it sounds. Or they just get into all these legal complexities. I mean, I mentioned this in the book, the happiest person I've ever met, or one of, my ski instructor. He said, I'm not rich, but I have a rich life.
It's pretty profound.
Isn't that rosy cheeks, skied in the mountains, a woman who loved him, fresh food on the grill every night? Again, I want to be really clear, out of the 8 forms of wealth, money is a form of wealth. And I think, I work with a lot of super wealthy people, and with awareness and doing the right things, your money can serve you. And a lot of my clients live really beautiful lives. But what I'm saying is financial wealth without soulfulness is an empty victory. So you've got to be so careful so that the money doesn't create problems with it. But, there are financially successful people who live beautiful lives.
Sure. So it's not the pursuit of financial success that's the problem. It's pursuing financial success while neglecting all of these other areas of wealth.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Not only do you want people to eat out alone, which I promise you I'll go and do. I'll report back.
Love to know.
But you, and this is actually something that I have thought about before, is kind of getting off grid, going ghost for a year. Now that's in your adventure chapter or part of the book. Not sure if everyone would classify that as adventure, but what is it about? What is going ghost? And why is this something that you think people could think about, might benefit them?
So going ghost for a year, and it's an ideal. You can do it for a week, you can do it for a month, you can do it for a quarter, but it's basically you check out. And I mean, if you don't have a family, it's much easier, of course. But let's say you don't have a family. Going ghost for even a quarter means maybe you rent a cottage in Maine or in Bali or Vietnam. And you leave social media and you leave your everyday life and you read and you meditate and you pray and you walk the beach and you journal and you become the person you've always wanted to be. And you get really grounded and rooted in what's most important. Then you return to the world, sort of like Neo in the old movie, The Matrix, born anew. But I think we are so in the world right now, and there's so much noise around us, we don't hear the signal. And what's the point about spending your greatest hours chasing a mountain only to get to the end and realize that you climbed the wrong mountain? And I do think a lot of people are busy being busy. And there's so much going on, and they're just chasing their days. And the days slip into weeks, weeks slip into months, months slip into years, and they're going to miss out on what's most important in life. So that chapter, Going Ghost, is doing a hard stop, getting away from all the noise, and just really getting grounded and rooting, like reading the classics, for example. Buying a notebook and writing out what I want the next 50 years to look like. MVP, meditating, visualizing, praying, fasting, cleaning things out, spending time alone. What a concept. I mean, ultimately, I believe your relationship with your work, your relationship with your money, your relationship with your family comes down to your primary relationship with yourself. So if you don't nurture that, know that, and build that, and grow that, then every other relationship is going to be influenced by that lack of connection with who you want to be.
And if you're not really connected with yourself,
yes,
you're very likely not to be showing up in those relationships as your true self.
Absolutely.
That's where personas and masks, and then how can someone love you for who you actually are if they can't see you?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. So I just want to understand you. You're saying, how can someone love you for who you are if you're not showing who you are?
Which to me that's true connection, right?
Yeah, that's really good. It's really good. The more you're comfortable in your own skin, the more you're showing, you're right, the more you're showing who you truly are. There's a lot of power in that.
Scary too.
It's scary.
So what about the person who can't do 3 months in Bali? As glorious as that sounds,
Then-
let's say they have the family, they have the kids, the dogs. How can they approach going ghost?
Then do 3 days in your bedroom. Just like spend time alone. Genius loves solitude. Spend time alone. Maybe it's once a week, do a digital Sabbath. It could be Sunday for yourself. Maybe do it once a month if you can't do it every week. But once a month, 24 hours, no phone, all alone, walking your city like a wandering mystic. Just exploring life, thinking. What a concept. Thinking. Being around art. I love art. Going to art galleries. Going ghost, What I advise my clients is once a week, turn off your phone for 24 hours. And on that day, get a massage. On that day, no work whatsoever. On that day, no responsibilities.
Sounds fun.
Sounds
fun.
Well, you can't give what you don't have. If you're empty, you can't give anything to your team. You can't give anything to your work. You can't give anything to your family. So in the 5am Club, I talk about the twin cycles of elite performance. If you look at the best entrepreneurs, the best athletes, it's their work-rest ratios. The best athletes, in many ways, it's how well they recover. Best entrepreneurs work in sprints. So the hustle and grind way of being doesn't work. It depletes what I call your 5 assets of genius, which includes willpower, cognition, energy, etc. All I'm saying is taking a day off a week, completely going ghost, no phone, no conversations. It renews the well of your creativity, your energy, your willpower, your soul. And you get the sparkle back, the energy back, the inspiration back. It does sound fun. And then you go back to work or your family and you're born anew.
In the growth section of your book, you talk about, I'll try. The problem with those 2 words. Why is that something we should try and avoid including in our vocabulary?
Well, to me, those are swear words. I'll try. So when someone says, if I say, you know what, there's a great book to read, or there's a piece of science that says this new morning routine will help you. And they go, yeah, I'll try. What they're really saying is, I'm not committed. And so I believe you can tell someone who is stuck in victimhood versus leadership by their vocabulary. They use words of hate. They use words of apathy. They use, a victim is someone who gives away their power to their excuses. So I'll try means I'm not committed. I'll try could mean I'm scared. I'll try means I'm not invested. So if you want to be an elite performer, I think strip out I'll try from your vocabulary. And in that chapter, I quote Yoda from Star Wars. He goes, there is either do or not do. There is no try. I think that's a great mantra. There is no try. Even business builders, it's like they don't say, the great ones don't say, oh yeah, I'll try to get my mission done. As you know very well, the mindset and the vocabulary of the great business builders is it will get done. It's like a military campaign. We must execute. I think of there was one hip hopper, and he was on a treadmill against another rapper, and they were like doing a running contest. And this one said, I'm either going to win or I'm going to die, but I'm not going to get off this treadmill.
It's a good mindset. You also talk about the danger of collecting resentment. What happens when we collect resentment?
If we don't know, I believe if we go through life, we all get hurt. Micro trauma and macro trauma. We all get our hearts broken. Sometimes we encounter difficult people. And so the chapter is called Don't Be a Resentment Collector, because if we start collecting in business, we get disappointed, let's say. In our love lives, let's say we get disappointed. If our ethical ambitions don't come true, we get disappointed. And if we don't know how to process through it, we start to become a resentment collector. Carl Jung, the eminent psychologist, called it a shadow side. And we develop this subconscious field of hurt and anger and resentment. And that we think it's not there, but it affects it creates inflammation, it affects our energy, it produces all these, cortisol and unhealthy, in some cases, unhealthy neuroregulators, neurochemicals. And so learning how to process through resentment to release, even forgiveness. The people we haven't forgiven, we're carrying them on our backs through life with us. How exhausting is that? How does that affect our creativity and our productivity and our performance?
Is this where being able to let the small things go becomes important?
Well, I wrote a book in the past and there was a chapter called The Big Lie of Positive Thinking. I think it's some people say, just be positive, just be grateful. I think that can be very dangerous. And here's the nuance.
Toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity.
Right.
Simon, just be positive. Just let it go. Well, that'll build up and it'll come back to bite you.
Yeah, there's a lack of acknowledgement.
Yeah. So I'm not into, quote unquote, just be positive, just be grateful, because then you swallow the resentment, the shame, the anger. What I believe is healthy is you process through it, through meditation, visualization, prayer, writing in a journal, sweat lodging if it's big, for example, or therapy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So positive thinking is valuable once you've moved through the emotional component. In my methodology, I have something that a lot of people talk about mindset. I have a model called the 4 interior empires. Mindset is important, your psychology, your positivity. But I believe there's 3 other interior empires after your mindset, and that's your heart set, which is your emotionality. You've got to deal with those emotions. Your physicality, I call it your health set, and your spirituality, your soul set. And only when we work on those 4 interior empires do we ultimately have those strong, healthy inner lives that create amazing outer lives.
You mentioned mantra a couple of times here today, and it was in your book that I learned what mantra actually means, broken down.
Yes. Yeah, mantra. Man is Sanskrit for mind, and tra is Sanskrit for freedom. Mantra, freed the mind.
Do you have a favorite mantra?
Yes, I love Emile Coué. He was a French physician, and he had this mantra: every day and in every way, I'm feeling better and better. Every day and in every way, I'm feeling better and better. And I play with that mantra, and sometimes I say, every day and in every way, I'm getting stronger. And I used to be very scared of public speaking. I used to be very scared about doing a lot of things. And I was always looking for modalities to help me. And mantras, it's easy to dismiss the power of words, but I would just repeat to myself, every day in every way, I'm getting stronger and stronger, better and better every day. So words are powerful. If you want to be more loving, just I am being more loving. I am being more loving. You want to be better as a producer. It's just, so words are very powerful. I mean, there's science confirming the power of prayer. Even if you're not religious, pray. Call it scientific prayer because it works. So just praying for strength, praying for goodness, praying for your dreams to come true. Prayers work. Every prayer is heard.
You mentioned classics just before, and I wrote that down. What are the classic books that you would recommend people read if they were to go ghost for a year and there was 4 or 5 books other than, of course, The Wealth Money Can't Buy that they were going to take with them?
Well, Plato said, a house with a library has a soul. And one of the chapters in the book is Babel, book accumulation beyond life expectancy.
Yeah, and you speak about how many books you've got that you'll never read.
Exactly, which is, I think, a good addiction. So classics, I love buying books and audiobooks. Classics, I've been evangelizing this one for 2 decades. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's becoming very popular now. There's when I've been in the valleys of darkness in my life, The Prophet, Prophet, as you know, by Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran. Incredibly wise book. The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein is an amazing book. I think Isaacson's biography on Steve Jobs is one of the all-time great biographies. Yeah, those would be some of the books that come to mind.
I think you wrote in this book, do you have a practice where you read and then you do journal in a notebook? Is that to help with retention?
Exactly. It's the 45-15 rule. So every evening I'll read for 45 minutes at least and then spend 15 minutes deconstructing the information to make it sticky. So I think, it's great to read, but I think it can be a trap to read too much. It can be an escape mechanism. We're always learning, we're always reading, but we don't execute on it because we're afraid of failure.
Yeah, so it's a balance between learning and experience, or putting that information to practice in the real world.
Yeah, I'd rather be a minimalist than a maximalist. I'd rather master 3 books over the next 12 months and live them than, read 50 books and not get any traction on any one of them. So, and I think that's the thing, like shiny toy syndrome. We buy so many books or have so many friends, and I'd rather have 3 great friends. I'd rather master 3 great books. Even, I know a lot of entrepreneurs follow you. I think of one entrepreneur, every time I meet him, he has a new business that he's obsessed with. And I think if you look at the best entrepreneurs, they're monomaniacally focused on one business long after the inspiration has left them, and they do it for year after year after year until their vision becomes a reality.
Yeah, you say they go deep, not wide.
Yeah, exactly. Just go have a few friendships, but go deep. Read a few books, but go deep.
Yeah. I find writing down, taking notes after reading helps with retention, and also trying to explain what I've learned to someone else and having conversation can be really helpful. You mentioned, and I have to ask you because I guess you kind of promised it in the book. You said, if I meet you someday, I might tell you the story about how I lost 10 years of journals.
So that's funny. You're right. I'll just to protect the unpresent, I'll share the story. So Simon, a number of years ago, over 10 years of my personal journals, that would be my journals, not only where I write about my dreams and my hopes and things I'm learning. Often what I'll do is if I go to a restaurant in a foreign city, the next morning I'll glue, I travel with a little glue stick and I'll glue in the business card of the restaurant and write about it. I'd written about all my experiences, but also in those journals, I'd written about my struggles, my pain, insecurities, my written prayers, very personal. And long story short, over 10 years of my journals suddenly vanished. So, because a lot of people say to me, Robin, I'd love to write a journal, and I'm a huge believer in the tactical power and the healing power of journaling. Even for any elite performer, journaling, and we can get into some of the tactics, but it's such a powerful tool. You know, what you write about deepens in builds commitment. You want to get things done, write about getting things done. But a lot of people who journal say to me, Robin, here's what they say, Robin, what if someone reads my journals? And what I would say, what I learned from that experience is, if anyone reads my journals, they're going to see a human being on the path. They're going to see someone who's flawed, who has insecurities, who has strengths, who has dreams, who has hopes, who's living a life. What's to be worried about? And if they want to judge me, that doesn't really have anything to do with me.
It just means that they're not aware of their own flaws and things they need to work on at that stage.
And I think that also perhaps brings up the idea of getting comfortable with death.
Your Last Supper.
Yeah, the Last Supper chapter in The Wealth Money Can't Buy, right? Like, have your last supper now. And that comes from an experience. One of my close friends is a DJ, so my partner, Al, and he and his partner, we had this long meal in Rome. And we got on this topic of, if it was a dinner question, if this was our last meal, what would we order? And the point really is, I think human beings have an ambient, constant fear of death. It's in the background. And because it's ambient and invisible, subconscious, we don't know about it, but it causes us not to play full on, to be worried about what people think, to be concerned about rejection. What a huge fear, rejection. But once we realize that our time is short, even if we live a long life, we will be dust, and we become comfortable with death, and we make peace with death, and we're not frightened with death, then if someone takes your journals, or someone laughs at your business idea, or someone tries to bring you down or whatever, you don't really care because you are intimate with the shortness of life. And I think if you can be intimate with the shortness of life, then you're going to live to the point and live a really good life.
Is that how someone gets over the fear of rejection? Or what ways could someone overcome fear of rejection? And how would fear of rejection be holding someone back?
Well, how can you overcome a fear of rejection? You do the thing that causes you to rejection until you keep doing it and you don't feel rejection. You don't worry about it anymore. So, how do you become more powerful? You do the things that are taking your power away. How do you become a great public speaker? You give a lot of speeches.
So it comes back to being okay with being uncomfortable.
Be okay, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Hard is easy. Consistently put yourself in difficult situations, and of course you're going to grow. Spartan warriors, they would do difficult things to develop bravery. So that's one way to beat this fear of rejection. Secondly, I get back to MVP, meditation, visualization, and prayer. They work. People often say, what are the tactics? How can I build a strong interior core? Meditate, visualize yourself being strong and brave and doing difficult things, and pray for them. Even if it's journaling, prayer on paper. It's another tactic. So those would be two of the ways. And then for me, reading is having a conversation with the author. And when you have conversations with people, you're influenced by them and they shape you. So reading books of heroism, reading about Onassis, reading about Mandela, reading about the great women and men of the world, reading deeply from those rich autobiographies of our heroes. They make us stronger.
Right. That brings us back to, was it the dead board of directors?
Yes.
This idea, at least what I took from it, that often it can be expensive to go out and get advice from people who are living to sit on your board of directors and advise you on your business. But there's a whole lot of resources out there from people who have gone over the years but have left very valuable information for us.
Absolutely. And I want to acknowledge you for your preparation. It might seem common, but it's not so common to see people who are in your space as a podcaster to be so well prepared.
Thank you. Well, I think that's just downstream of the way you wrote the book, to be honest. It really did. I said before, and I meant it. It grabbed all of my attention. And I just went from chapter to chapter. And again, themes that I'd read about before, but written in a more accessible way and memorable.
Oh, thank you. And so the chapter you mentioned is Recruit a Dead Board of Directors. I think that's in the chapter, the fifth form of wealth, which is money. And so I think it's really important to surround yourself with people whose lives you want to be living. And so if one of the forms of wealth is money, and there's nothing wrong with it, what I'm trying to say in the book is money is only one of the 8 forms of wealth, but I'm not saying money is not important and it's dirty and there's something wrong with it. You can do amazing things with financial freedom. And the chapter is Recruit a Dead Board of Directors, which is, you want to learn how to be a financial tycoon, read Frank Brady's book on Onassis. You want to learn how to be forgiving, read about Mother Teresa. If you want to read about being an athlete, read the books from the great athletes. So we often say, well, how do I do it? Or I'd love to have a mentor. Just go buy their books and recruit this dead board of directors to advise you and read their books, be influenced by their approach and their philosophy and their habits. And then maybe if you have a key choice, go into your quiet room, close your eyes, and ask this silent board of directors what their advice is. And imagine what Mandela would say and Mahatma Gandhi and whoever it might be.
It's clever. You mentioned journal tactics, and if we don't cover that, come back and cover it. There'll be people saying in the comment section you had Robin Sharma on and he mentioned journal tactics and you didn't dig in. What are the main journal tactics that you would want to leave someone with? How do you journal in a way that is going to be most productive, most influential in your life?
Well, I would say, first of all, do it every morning. What you do daily is so much more important than the few things you do annually.
Amen to that.
And that's one of the most key things I would humbly offer all of your viewers from around the world. Your days are your life in miniature. If you want to predict your future, look at what you're doing today. And for years, micro habits is getting very popular now, and that's wonderful. For years, I've been sharing a brain tattoo, which is small, daily, seemingly insignificant improvements when done consistently over time lead to stunning results. So it's those little things we do every day that are so innocuous, we might not do them. We wonder, will they make a difference? But you do them every day, and over time, they lead to a tsunami of results. And so I would say consistency is the mother of mastery. Write every day in a journal. Make it part of your morning routine. And so then what are the tactics? First of all, they're just free flow. Write about how you're feeling. If you're suffering from heartbreak, write about heartbreak. Pour your pain onto the written page and let the pain out of your system. It'll be very healing. If you're in a summer of your lifetime or on the top of the mountain, write about your victories. Write about what you're learning about. I did an exercise, and we've all heard of this, but I actually did it 2 days ago, I believe, and it was my funeral exercise. And it was, what do I want people to say? But it's good to do it once in a while. We've all heard about it, but it's good to actually do it, because as you write in a journal, you might go, oh, I know what I want people to say, or I know what my next 3 months should be, but writing it takes the fuzzy and vague thinking and it forces you to find the words to bring clarity. And as you have more clarity, then your daily choices are more clear, and more clear decisions create greater results.
Yeah, what do I want the people who love me? What do I want to be remembered for? Which then I think it intersects. You write in another section of the book, and I'd be keen to, or be interested to hear what the takeaway is. But you write about the fact that most of the most influential, heroic people that have lived before us and have gone are no longer spoken about. They're not remembered, despite being so tremendously influential in their time. Why is that an important thing for us to think about?
Marcus Aurelius in the Meditations, there's a paragraph where he says something to the effect of, all of this for a year on the calendar. And I think what he meant, this great Roman emperor and philosopher, I think what he meant was, these kings, these emperors, they conquered and they did so much so they could have a year named after them. And in modern society, we strive and we struggle and we have all this ambition so we can have our name on a bestseller list or social media feed or hospital wing or TV show. But I think it's a trap. I think it's an illusion, because we all end up as dust. And as you mentioned from that chapter in the book, how many of the great kings and queens, how many of the great business titans who were revered at the time do we still talk about? Not that many. And so I think the philosophical point is we really don't matter that much. And I hope I say that properly. Doesn't mean we shouldn't respect ourselves. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be ambitious. There's a lot in this book on elite performance, productivity, building great business.
Yeah, it's not about diminishing your self-worth.
No, not diminishing our self-worth, or even being in the world and operating in a way that's productive, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the proverb that I mentioned earlier, be in the world, but not of the world. Do amazing things in the world. Be a great human being. Build great businesses or empires of creativity. Have a wonderful family life. Run a marathon. Do amazing things. But see, that's all just fleeting. And our lives, even a long life, is a very short ride. So just, if you can have intimacy with that idea, even every day, by prayer, meditation, journaling, conversation, then I think you're not going to take yourself too seriously.
Continuing with this theme of death, not to be too morbid, but you finish the book with living fully so you can die empty.
Yes.
Unpack that.
Last chapter of The Wealth Money Can't Buy, which is whether you get to live 100 years or a few more days. Most of us don't know. I think that's what the pandemic has taught us, that life can turn in a day. And that's why you see, what do they call it, revenge travel. All these people who said, I'll go to Rome, I'll learn to surf, I'll see the Eiffel Tower, I'll swim with the dolphins in Mauritius sometime in the future, they realize we better do it now.
So in some respects, that's a hidden positive of the pandemic, to give people that perspective.
Absolutely. Work has changed. People have changed. I mean, the world is fundamentally different, I believe, now than it was 4 years ago. And one of the positives is, you're right, people are less willing to postpone living fully. I think even now we hug our family a little closer. We tell people we love them a little more often, and we're less willing not to take the risks that are important. So that last chapter of the book is live fully so you can die empty. And I use the quote of George Bernard Shaw, who said something to the effect of, I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, not some annoying little clod of grievances and excuses, hoping the world will make my life amazing. And I think that's a really great way to live, to be so used up when you die that you've given everything and you're like a smoldering pile of ashes because you've gone full out. And I think that's really just a great way to live versus dead person walking
Holding
through
back.
life. Yeah, holding back.
Mm-hmm. There's a psychologist, Tom Gilovich, and he did this really interesting study where he interviewed a lot of people that were close to death, and he was interested in what's driving regret. What is leading to dissatisfaction at the end of someone's life? And he was able to see that the majority of regret that people had at the very end of their life was driven not by taking action. It was driven by inaction. And it was people not acting in a way that would step them closer to their ideal self, to who they wanted to become. Not inaction towards like society's obligations, the kind of ought self as he put it, but towards the ideal self. It was not doing that trip to Rome, not taking up that musical instrument or learning to sing or things like that, which I think just kind of comes back to this point you were making about squeezing the most out of life.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There was, I believe, I know you're from Australia. I believe there was an Australian hospice nurse who did some research or wrote a book about the regrets of the dying because she'd seen so many people close to the end. And a lot of their regrets were about the love that these people didn't give. In the book, there's a story about that. There's these two brothers, and they had a fight when they were younger. And they spent decades not even talking to each other because of this fight. And as time went on, Simon, they forgot what the fight was about. And then one of the brothers became sick. And so he was in a hospital room. And his other brother decided to go visit him. And the other brother walks in, and this gentleman who was in bed sees this brother, and they embraced. The brother walked in with, I believe it was a box of chocolates. And the dying brother said, I'm so angry at you. We lost all these years. We don't even know what it was about. And so they hugged each other and they made up. And then this gentleman actually died a few days later. And the point I'm trying to make is, at the end, it's the words left unspoken, the dreams left undone, and the kindness that we haven't shown. That
Forgiveness.
And the forgiveness. You said, I hope it doesn't sound morbid. I mean, I think talking about death is inspirational. I think people get so scared about death, but if we could build fluency with our mortality and make it a part of our ritual every day, just write about it in the most positive way. Life is short. Here's what I want to do. Let me not hold back today, etc. Then we'd go out in the world and we would do amazing things. We'd be more productive versus playing with our digital devices. We'd work to the point. We'd go home. We'd remember. With kids, you have a little window of opportunity. Spend time with them. With our significant others, give them the love. Be there for them. If we realize tomorrow might be our last day, we talk to the gardener I mentioned and ask.
Remember, we're alive.
What a concept. Remember the fragility of life and then savor how beautiful a human life is.
Someone puts all of the recommendations and kind of 8 forms of wealth into action in their life. How do they measure success? How do they know they're on the right path?
Well, I wrote about this in the 5 a.m. Club, joy as a GPS. Joy is your GPS. How do you know if you're living a good life? You're in joy. Doesn't mean every day not every day is great for me. I'm no guru. I have hard days. I've had hard years. But trusting your joy is very powerful. So you know you're living or on track around the 8 forms of wealth because you're feeling joyful. I believe we have an egoic self and we have a heroic self. And we are living our finest lives or on track in hot pursuit. Our heroic selves, which is just the voice of wisdom within us, call it a conscience, it knows we're not betraying ourselves. And the response, the symptom, is joy. Even with people. There are people in our lives, we're with them, we don't feel good. Trust that.
Robin, thank you so much. I commend you on putting this together. You mentioned earlier there was some resistance and friction. So I hope you're proud of what you've accomplished, and thank you so much for coming and sharing. I know that if the listeners put this into action, there are huge benefits up for grabs. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, and I would say this has been one of the most interesting podcasts I've ever been on. And thank you for the gift of the coffee, which I'm going to enjoy. And I can tell just sitting here across from you, what you're made of and what a great person you are. So it's really been a pleasure to share this time with you.
Thank you. Report back. I want to know how that espresso lands, how it compares to what you get in Italy.
Sure. Thank you, Simon.
And if people want to continue to learn from you, we'll put the book into the show notes, but where else can we send them?
Sure. The mothership is robinsharma.com, and I'm on Instagram, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera.
All the places.
All the places we know about. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Really a pleasure.
There you have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and want to stay up to date with future episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Apple or Spotify. Finally, thank you for showing up and the effort that you're making to take control of your health. I look forward to hanging out with you again in the next episode.